Okay, so if you're watching this now, what you're watching is me just going through the last set of slides in the last class. And if if this is not the current semester, if you're watching this past 2022, I might have actually collapsed this into a previous week because I'm planning on rearranging a few things. So if that happens, forgive me. But this would have been week 7. And what we do is we just wrap up with a few slides. We talk through our papers, but because you're not going to be here, we can't really talk through the papers that were due, the paper and the discussion board that were due since the last class that we haven't talked about. So, what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to go through the slides and we'll just talk about them as if it was class. Because you're not interacting with me, this is going to be very short comparatively, something like maybe a half hour of just my talking as opposed to the class where there's interactive or time to write or that kind of thing. So here we go. So this is Lead Like Jesus, part 7. And he starts off by saying leadership is about going someplace. It's about bringing the future into view through the acts and choices of today. And that's right. We know that that's what it is. It's about going somewhere and it's about taking people where they are trying to go. Only, he says, only when our transformation is underway can we begin to bring positive change to the lives of the people that we touch. In other words, leading like Jesus is about leading change. Now, we have an entire course on leading change. And what we'd like you to do, if you haven't taken that course yet, is map what you're doing in this class to that class. Like when you're thinking about leading change, you should be thinking about how to lead these people in such a way that you help them grow, not just the change itself. But we'll connect those dots later on. He says the change that Jesus came to introduce was not a minor adjustment to current thinking and behavior that would allow for better levels of performance within an existing system. The change he came to lead was radical and revolutionary, and that's right. He was dealing with something far more than your organization's change. He was dealing with the renovation of your heart, and that's a very different thing. So, what I'd like you to do is pause this uh, video right now. Get out your notepad, your notebook, computer, whatever it is that you write with a reflective writing. And I want you to ask yourself, has following Jesus revolutionized how you lead? Should it? Or are you just making minor tweaks to be a little bit nicer? So I'm going to ask you to pause this. I'm not going to sit and wait for 5 minutes while you write and then ask you things because I can't hear you back. So just pause it and then we'll move on. Pause it. Okay, so we're back. Hopefully you have actually done what I asked you to do and think through this because you get out of this what you put into it. If you haven't, stop and pause it now. Okay, chapter 31. This is leading positive change. Leading lasting change requires understanding and addressing 4 essential levels of change. So you have to change in knowledge, attitude, behavior, and cultural norms and expectations. And each are a little bit different and they do different things for you. Change is hard. Change is incredibly hard. Even Machiavelli warned in The Prince, like, look, one of the most dangerous things you can do is lead change. Okay, so just be aware of that. Okay, in many respects, change in knowledge is the easiest to accomplish. All you have to do is read or listen to something. You learn something, something has changed. You know something different than what you knew before. So that's like level 1. Then changing attitude is a little bit more difficult than changing knowledge because attitude is an emotionally charged bit of knowledge. It's when you feel strongly in either a positive or negative way about something that you know, right? Attitudes can shift. They do shift. Stephen Covey gives this example of how he's on the subway and these kids are running around and he's getting really upset with the dad who has these kids running around. The dad seems like he's just zoned out and he's like, sir, do you think you should do something about your children? They're a little unruly. And he's kind of miffed at the guy. And then the man says, oh, I'm sorry, we just came from the hospital, their mother just passed. I honestly, I didn't even know that they were doing anything. I don't know what to do next, and uh, I'm I'm just not with it. In a moment, in a split second, his attitude changed from one of annoyance to, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry, your wife just died, and it changed your attitude. So attitude can change. It doesn't change as easily as knowledge, but it can change pretty quickly. Okay, changing behavior is also challenging. And if you ever try to change behavior, exercise, diet, do something different than what you're doing, that's hard to get. The changing behavior is also challenging. It's different from changing knowledge or attitude because now people have to do something. There are a number of studies. Actually, okay, so if you read about changing behaviors, you'll read, well, it takes 21 days to change behavior. I've studied this. It can, depending on like if your goal is to drink more water, it can take 21 days to drink more water. It's not a hard change. It's just making sure that you're doing the thing. Excuse me. So doing something simple like that can take a limited amount of time, but it can take you months, maybe 4 or 6 months to actually do this, a real significant life change. A number of years ago, I started just eating healthy just because I was tired of feeling bad, right? So I have 6 kids, and when your wife sends you to Taco Bell at 2 in the morning because she's having a craving when she's pregnant, you go and get it. You don't say, it's 2 in the morning. I really would rather not. No, you just go get it. But at that point, you're now hungry. So I added on some extra pounds too. And after 10 years worth of that between 6 kids, not all of it was, pregnancy time, but a lot of it was, or early overwhelmed by child time, it adds up. So a couple of years ago, I just started eating right. And I lost 40 some odd pounds just doing that. But I was hyper aware that, I'm not, so I would eat, for example, oatmeal every morning. Now, I don't know if oatmeal is a great thing for weight loss or not, but oatmeal every morning started me off reasonably right with just something solid like oatmeal that wasn't going to be overly taxing to my system or too much sugar or what. I mean, it was like oatmeal with maybe a little jelly, or I came up with all kinds of interesting variations, but it wasn't going to be something that was detrimental. But I was actually scared. I was like, while I saw the pounds coming down, I was actually like, I'm not going to break my streak of eating like oatmeal or egg whites or something along those lines that was reasonably healthy every day. And I was very concerned that if I break the streak, I'm going to revert back to previous behaviors of what I would have done before. And I was right to be thinking that way because it could take you months, 4 months, 6 months, maybe even a year, depending on what the change is that you're trying to do. If you're trying to work out every day, it's going to take you a longer time than just learning to like drink extra water every day. Okay, so changing behavior is difficult. Changing cultural norms and expectations is going to be the most difficult change. The most difficult change of all is because it involves many people who bring to the party a variety of perceptions about what should or should not be done. As a result, lasting change in community only happens over time. So change leaders need to be in it for the long haul. So I'm reminded of Kuhn, Kuhn, I think it was, with paradigms. This is where Covey gets the term paradigms. Like many scientific discoveries, that whole scientific generation has to die off before people are willing to consider thinking about it differently. Same thing in organizations. You might have to fire people and replace people before the organization is ready to embrace a different way of operating. So cultural change is very, very thorny. And chapter 32, Ego Anonymous. Why change is difficult? There's a number of reasons. And he lists a handful of them. I don't know that these are like scientifically or academically sound or valid, but for all practical purposes, these are legit. And I've seen these in various ways, or some of these in various ways before. People just feel awkward. People feel alone. They focus on what they have to give up. That's big. That's real big. They can handle only so much change. They worry about resources. Another really big one. People are at different levels of readiness, and people tend to revert to old behaviors. Now, I know what I'm seeing here because I teach both graduate and undergraduate organizational change classes. So I've seen a lot of the organizational change research. Let's start with the first one where people feel awkward. Or what I'm going to ask you to do before I do that is, again, write which of these 7 most affected a change that you went through. So think about an organizational change that you've experienced. It could be something very minor. It could be something that you led. It could be something that you were being led in. And what did you notice about how people reacted? That they were awkward, or they were worried about what they had to give up, or resources, or just what? Okay, pause this right now, write, and then come back to it. Okay, so we're back, and so I'm just going to work through some of these things. Before we go to the next step, people feeling awkward, yeah, that happens because like you don't know exactly what to predict. People feel alone, same kind of thing. Like I used to know exactly, like you when you have um you have a better feeling about things when you know how to predict people's behavior or how things are going to go, even if you're bored out of your mind. But then when something changes, you just feel like, whoa, what's going on? It's alone. When people focus on what they have to give up, that's a really significant thing. Like, am I going to lose? So let's think about moving offices, right? Maybe you like your office, maybe it's a little bit larger than average. If you move offices, are you going to have a one next to a bathroom? Is it going to be real small? Is it going to be a longer distance from, like, you know what to predict now, but you don't know what'll happen later. And so people worry about, what they have to give up, or worry about resources, or they, how much change is going to keep happening, right? Like, you know what it is now, but you're not sure what's going to happen. And if there's not enough pressure to actually make the change and solidify it, just like my oatmeal, people will revert back to old behaviors. So um, I'm telling you, there's a lot here in this little bit, and we're going to talk about all these kinds of things in 634, which is org change. Okay, we believe ego, edging God out, is the biggest addiction of all because it motivates every other addiction. So when you're talking about how people function, when they start doing that, when there's any idol, and so edging God out is simply idolatry, right? You put anything above God as opposed to like just listening to him and just doing what he's asked you to do. When you put any idol above him, you're going to have problems in the way that that idol manifests. Let me give you an example. So if money becomes more important, then you will chase money, and money will not satisfy you precisely where money is ill-equipped to satisfy you, like relationships. Let's use relationships as your idol. That will fail you precisely in all the other areas where it cannot, because nothing else can be God, right? So everything else will not satisfy you in some way or another. Okay, signs of egomania are things like pride and fear. We talked about that in a number of chapters last week and the week before. Negativity, low self-esteem, pride, ego comes in so many ways. So before we go on, I want you to think about what causes you to edge God out. What is it? And when you do this, when you pull in any other idol, what's the result of that? Okay, pause this and then write, and then come back to me. Okay, so hopefully you have written that down and you have some ideas. Blanchard goes on and says, in fact, our greatest job as leaders is to let the one, that's God, who is leading us to become visible to others through what we say and do. If you have any of these other idols, you're kind of masking that or making this not less visible to others. So he suggests like join Ego Anonymous. Just like think about this like a support group, like a 12-step group, like, hey, I'm Darren. I have an ego. Hi, Darren. Okay. So, and then work through the steps. And the steps are things like, one, I admit that on more than one occasion, I have allowed my ego needs and my drive for earthly success to negatively impact my role as a leader. My leadership has not been the servant leadership that Jesus modeled. Now, if you're honest, if you've been in any leadership position for any period of time, you probably have to admit that. I mean, I can't think of anybody that has not had that, where some other things has edged God out as opposed to what you should be doing. Number two, I've come to believe that God can transform. Now, by the way, this sounds just like the 12 steps, like the Alcohol Anonymous kind of 12 steps. I've come to believe that can transform my leadership motives, thoughts, and actions into servant leadership and Jesus model. So one of the steps is like, I believe in my higher power or whatever. So he's kind of just following that format. Yeah, and God has been able to transform and will transform you to the degree that you'll let him. Number three, I made a decision to turn my leadership efforts over to God and to become a disciple of Jesus and the kind of servant leader that he modeled. Good. I mean, if you've done that, that's a next critical step. Number four, I made a searching and fearless inventory. Okay, Blanchard's outright plagiarizing at this point with that searching and fearless inventory. Okay, That's okay. We know that we're trying to do that 12 steps just like AA. Okay. I made a searching and fearless inventory of my own leadership motives, thoughts, and behaviors that are inconsistent with leading like Jesus. By the way, if you do this, if you pause, turn this off, and just like make that inventory, like write down where are you trying to do something on your own or for your own selfish interests as opposed to trying to lead like Christ would have you lead. It'll be pretty eye opening. Not going to make you right, but if you do, you'll be that much better off. Number five, I've admitted to God, to myself, and to at least another person when I've been inconsistent in leading like Jesus in my motives, thinking, and behavior. So, admitting to God, that's good. Talk to somebody else, like have some kind of accountability, build that into your life. It will be huge for you in your leadership. Number six, I'm entirely ready to have God remove all the character defects that keep me from leading like Jesus. Are you? Like it's easy to say that, but are you actually ready for him to burn away all the dross for you to be what you should be? Because then it's not about you kind of feathering your nest. It's really about you taking care of other people. And that shifts the dynamics. And that's good, but it could be painful along the way. Number seven, I humbly ask God to remove my shortcomings and to strengthen me against the temptations of recognition, power, greed, and fear. Number eight, I've made a list of those people that I may have harmed by my ego driven leadership, and I'm willing to make amends. This is also very difficult. Going back to them and being like, look, remember when I was in charge of this, whatever, and I am sorry. I dropped the ball. I goofed. I was a tyrant. Whatever it is, go back and try to sort that out. Number nine, I've made direct amends to such people whenever possible, unless doing so would injure them or others. Again, same part of number eight. Number 10, I continue to take a regular personal inventory regarding my leadership role. And when I am wrong, I promptly and specifically admit it. Now, this is a great practice moving forward. And by the way, if you're a parent, doing this with your kids of regularly reviewing how you've interacted with them and then admitting things that you've done wrong immediately and getting that's a great training tool for them, let alone for you. So do it. I mean, uh, somebody said on their paper, their Proverbs paper, um, what was the language? Uh, we know you're not, nobody can be perfect. So we know you can't be perfect. So it's foolish to pretend like you are. That's right. That's exactly right. We know that you don't have all the answers. Okay. Number 11, I engage in the disciplines of solitude, prayer, study of scripture, and the belief in God's unconditional love for me in order to align my leadership with what Jesus modeled and to consistently seek ways to be a servant leader for the people I encountered in my leadership responsibilities. Yeah, I mean, there's a reason that we did the solitude exercise. It's not just to, check something off. Take that time, feel what that's like. I mean, most of us, our to-do lists just kept coming back at us, or some music or something, some thoughts kept invading back where, I don't know that it's right to be that needy of noise in order to feel okay. So the prayer, the study of scriptures, all these things are going to make you a better leader. Just think about how much your thinking has changed just by reading the Proverbs a number of times this semester. Okay, so get into the scriptures, read them, become more like what Christ would want you to become like. And then number 12, I'm committed to carrying the message of leading like Jesus to all those who have an opportunity to influence, all those who I have an opportunity to influence. That's right. And you should be demonstrating that by the way that you lead, as well as explaining that to those who are ready to hear, hey, really, if you want to take this up a notch, if you want to take it to a whole new level, this is what I do. This is how you can do it as well. Okay, so that chapter was um ah, I'm trying to even think of what the word is. It's like a little too, trying to fit the form of the AA 12 step, whatever, but it was still valuable because, like, if you think through those kinds of things, you'll position yourself to be like really thinking through, are you doing what you're supposed to be doing? And that's actually one of the last slides here in my slide deck. And again, I told you this wasn't going to take long. It's really not taking long. You're going to watch Ken Blanchard talk about leading like Jesus. This is going to take about an hour 10 minutes, something like that, beyond what I've been talking about here. And then I just want you to reflectively write and think through, you know, what's your final takeaway? If I was in class, I would be asking you at the end of this, at the end of the class, like, what's the big thing that you took away from this entire class? And then what are you, more importantly, what are you going to do now with what you know about leading like Jesus? So that's what I want you to take away. Again, this is probably less than a half hour that we've been talking, but I want you to think through those things. Thank you so much for your time. Thank you for working with me through this class to spend this time. I know that based on the assignments, the reading, especially Greenleaf, the amount of reading, the assignments, I know that you've grown a lot this semester, and I appreciate your willingness to keep at it rather than just throwing in a towel. So watch Ken Blanchard and just think through, like, what is it that I need to do to change? And that's the last thing that I want to leave you with. Thank you for your time, and I'll talk to you later. Bye bye.